The midpoint formula provides a way to find the exact middle point between two given points. For example, I'm going to draw on a coordinate plane not to scale 2 points, 0, 12, and negative 4, 5. If I wanted to find the exact middle point of this line segment, I could use the midpoint formula. And the midpoint formula provides an ordered pair that comes from halfway between the x values. So in this case, the x values are negative 4 and 0. So I'm going to go halfway between negative 4 and 0 as the x coordinate of the midpoint. And the y coordinate of the midpoint will simply be halfway between 5 and 12. And this ordered pair, whose x-coordinate is halfway between negative 4 and 0, and whose y-coordinate is halfway between 5 and 12, is the midpoint of this line segment. Halfway between negative 4 and 0 is negative 2. Another way to state halfway between negative 4 and 0 would be to say the average of negative 4 and 0. And halfway between 5 and 12, another way to say what is halfway between 5 and 12 would be to say, hey, what's the average between 5 and 12? And that's exactly 8.5. So this midpoint is exactly negative 2, comma, 8.5. Negative 2, 8.5. Now let's talk about that in precise mathematical terms. The midpoint formula, again, is 2 points that are simply halfway between the two x coordinates and halfway between the two y coordinates. The midpoint formula stated the midpoint between x1, y1, and x2, y2 is an ordered pair. The midpoint formula is an ordered pair. The x-coordinate of the ordered pair is halfway between the x-coordinates, halfway between x1 and x2, or, as I said earlier, the average of those two values, x1 plus x2 divided by 2. If you have two numbers and you want to find their average, or the number halfway between the two, you can add them up and divide by 2. The y-coordinate of the midpoint is the result of adding the two y values, y1 and y2, and dividing by 2. The average of y1 and y2 is y1 plus y2 divided by 2. Let's do an example or two. The first example is the values that I drew a diagram of earlier. Applying the midpoint formula to find the midpoint of negative 4, 5 and 0, 12. Now we already know this to be negative 2, 8.5. But applying this formula, I'll take the two x values, negative 4 and 0, and what I'll do is add them up and divide by 2. Negative 4 plus 0 divided by 2 is the x-coordinate of this midpoint. Negative 4 plus 0 is negative 2. Or negative 4 over 2, and negative 4 over 2 is negative 2. That is the x-coordinate of the midpoint between negative 4, 5 and 0, 12. How about the y-coordinate? Well, that would be 5 plus 12 divided by 2. y1 plus y2 over 2. 5 plus 12 divided by 2. 5 plus 12 is 17. And 17 divided by 2 is exactly positive 8.5 or 8.5. How about the midpoint between 3, negative 2 and negative 1, negative 8? Well, the midpoint will have an x-coordinate and a y-coordinate. The x-coordinate is the result of adding the x's and dividing by 2. So let's add the x's, 3 plus negative 1, and then divide by 2. To find the y-coordinate of the midpoint, I will add the y values and divide by 2. Negative 2 plus negative 8 divided by 2. Well, the x-coordinate, 3 plus negative 1, is 2 over 2. And the y-coordinate of the midpoint is negative 2 plus negative 8, which is negative 10 divided by 2. Simplifying these two fractions, 2 over 2 is 1. Negative 10 over 2 is negative 5. The midpoint, the point halfway between 3, negative 2, and negative 1, negative 8, is 1, negative 5.